All right, so welcome to Home Energy Efficiency and Mastery, where we dive into all things home comfort, energy savings, and sustainability. Today we have a very special guest joining us, Sean Mason from Koala Insulation of North Broward and Boca Raton. Koala Insulation is known for helping homeowners achieve optimal comfort while reducing their energy costs. And Sean is here to share some incredible insights on how to make your home not just more comfortable, but also more efficient. Now let's talk about the components of home efficiency and comfort, where Sean will break down the essentials from insulation and everything in between. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, and welcome one and all to our listeners and viewers online.
All right. So, Sean, you're going to talk to us about the components of insulation, or should I say home comfort? Let's go
Yeah.
from there.
So, whenever you're thinking about home comfort, there are actually three components involved, right? Especially in South Florida, you're always thinking about, we really battle with heat more than we do with cold. So, it's your air conditioner, which is composed of the outside and inside unit, which is your compressor and air handler. There are your ducts that actually deliver that cooler air into your home. And then the third component is insulation. All three of those components have to work in harmony for you to achieve the maximum efficiency in terms of comfort and performance.
All right. Now, you focus on insulation. Talk a little bit about how insulation helps in that process.
Right. So when your air is delivered into your home via your air conditioning system, right? Your air conditioning handler and compressor, their job is to take the air that's in your home, run it through the handler that cools that air,
Mm-hmm.
and then pumps it back out into your house. Usually that air comes out at about 55 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
right? Once that air comes out, your attic, which is basically below your roof, is basically your number one heat source in a home. I know people get sold on ideas of if you install brand new windows, this is going to reduce your energy, improve your energy efficiency by so much. Yes, it helps, but the truth is that I'd say 90% of your heat load is coming from your roof or slash your attic, right? So that air that's being pumped into your house, your attic, is a critical component of that because your attic is essentially what's between your external environment above your roof and the internal environment within your home, or what we call the space under air, right? So you need essentially a barrier between that hot air that sits in your attic and your conditioned space within your home to prevent that heat transfer between the attic environment and your actual home. And that's where insulation plays a critical role because the job of insulation is to block that heat transfer from happening between your attic and your conditioned space and therefore keep that cold air in your house cool and not have that house heat up faster than it should.
Okay. Now, one of the things that gets thrown on a lot is our value. Clear that up for people, especially within the South Florida region.
Yeah. So I won't get technical
Mm.
on you, but just think of R value as a measure of the thermal transfer that happens within your house. The main takeaway from an R value is the higher the R value number is, the more effective it is at reducing the heat flow between the attic and your living space. So in South Florida, the minimum standard, we're in what we call climate zone 1, right? There are several climate zones throughout the US. We're in climate zone 1. And for climate zone 1, the minimum requirement is an R value of 30. What that translates into is that in your attic, if you think about just traditional insulation, which is insulation that sits on your attic floor. So if you pop open your attic and you look in there and you see some stuff sitting on your attic floor, that's typically insulation. You need to have about 12 inches of insulation as a minimum. So when you get to an R value of 30, roughly you're going to get 12 inches of insulation, especially if it's fiberglass insulation. Uh, so that's kind of the key takeaway of the R value. Think about it as just, you can get R30, you can get R38, you can get R42. The higher the R value, that the better performing the insulation is in terms of keeping heat out of your home.
Okay. Now, so Florida has myriads of roof styles, and they roofs might look the same on the outside, but on the inside, one has more space, one has less space. How do you determine how much insulation is required or should be in one of those two attics?
Right. So the insulation standard doesn't really change, regardless of the roof style. You may have roofs that are hip, some that are gabled, some that are sloped, some that are flat. The standard in terms of the insulation requirement doesn't change. The type of insulation that you can use to achieve those standards will vary based on the the construction and design of the attic space within the roof within the house. So what changes the design of or how much space you have in the attic is more or less an architectural feature. You go into some homes, you have pretty much a consistent flat ceiling throughout the whole home on the interior. Some will have vaulted ceilings, right, where bedrooms might be at an 8 foot height, but you go into the living, dining, kitchen, and it's at 12, 15, 20 feet, right? What that does is that it's not that the roof necessarily fluctuates in height in the attic. What they're doing is they're building a standard roof and then they're creating different essentially heights by using drop downs or framing to give you the perception of increased height. What that means in the attic, however, is that one section of the attic you might be able to stand up in. The other section you have to crawl because now they've taken more height away from the attic and given it to the interior of the home. When you have varying heights in the attic, sometimes you're able to use blown in insulation, which is kind of more traditional, and then sometimes you may have to move to what we refer to as batt insulation because you're not going to have 12 inches of height to play with. Maybe it's only 10. So you need to employ different types of insulation and in different formats in order to still achieve the minimum R30. If you're less than R30, your home is going to struggle. So we've been into many homes where it has nice architectural features. Like, for example, you walk in and you see exposed beams and wood, and it looks fantastic. And you ask any homeowner that lives in a house like that, hey, how's your comfort over on this side of the house? And they'll tell you straight up, man, it's hot. I'm dying in the summer, and I haven't been able to find a solution. So sometimes, unfortunately, design trumps efficiency, right? And in selling a house sometimes and, just, presenting a home, the design is often what sells it, right? You walk in and you're wowed by what you see visually, and your senses kind of, your desire of what you're seeing visually kind of takes over from your sense of comfort. Like, you don't stop to think, what does this mean in terms of how is this house going to perform comfortably? Is there insulation above this? And so, those are the dynamics that are at play when you go into a house with seemingly similar roofs, but the attic space when you walk in there is, completely up and down.
So interesting, because the next thing is what do you do when you go out for an evaluation of someone's attic space?
Right. So one of the principles of quality insulation is that we, in I'd say 100% of the time, we advise customers when they call in for potential insulation services or estimates that we would like to set an appointment with them to come out and evaluate. And we're not doing that because we're charging for evaluations. Our evaluations are free. We do that because every house is different and every solution in terms of efficiency is different. And you can't assess or provide a true, solution for a customer if you're not able to inspect the space that they're trying to resolve the issue for. So when a customer calls in and say, hey, I'm interested in, improving my insulation, or I'm having this challenge and I think I need insulation, we set the appointment, we go out, first we have a conversation, right? We're trying to, I always believe that when a customer is calling us, they're calling us to solve a problem. They're not just calling us to say, "Hey, I like the idea of insulation. Let me just,
Get an
throw some
estimate.
in there."
Yeah.
They're having a problem,
Yeah.
right? So the first thing you need to do is kind of go out there and listen and understand what the problem is. It might be a specific problem, like, this side of my house is extremely hot in the afternoons, or it gets super cold when the weather changes, right? And the climate or the temperature changes. And you gather as much information from the customer. What's their, you know, FPNL bill like? How much are they paying monthly compared to the size of the home? And you kind of take all of those inputs into play, and before you actually, enter into the attic space, because that then informs you of what you need to be looking for when you get into the attic. Is the left side of the house hot? So let me see what's really going on the left side of the house. Is am I is a particular area too cool? Let's take a look at that. You know, when was work done in the house? Let's see what the other trades did in that space. So we go in, we look at the insulation that's there, we look at the ducts as well, because oftentimes you go into an attic and depending on the age of the home, the ducts are old, they may start having compromised issues, so they may be leaking, right? So you test for obvious signs of leakage. We use like a infrared thermometer gun. We check along the ducts. If we see obvious kind of temperature difference, if the attic is, for example, 110 degrees, and you hit an area on a duct and it's like 60, 55, immediately, hey, there's air coming out of the ducts from the air conditioner. So I have to advise the homeowner that, hey, you have some leaky ducts that you need to get resolved, because you're losing a significant amount of air to your attic and it's not helping your conditioned space. So we look at all those components. We look at the insulation that's there. Do we see the studs, right? And studs are essentially the what supports the drywall in your house, right? That's what the drywall attaches to. So your ceiling, it's basically screwed into wooden studs that support it. So if I can see your studs are usually, you know, at anywhere from 3 to 4 inches in the majority of homes. Some homes may even go up to 6 inches, 2 by 6 studs. If I can see it so I can walk on it, then immediately that tells me you don't have enough insulation. Okay, insulation needs to be at least 12 inches, right? So we take pictures, we come back down, we have a second conversation to say, hey, these are the findings, here are the recommendations based on the challenges you're having, and this is a solution that we think would be most effective.
Okay. All right. That's pretty good advice right there to everyone listening. Now, the final thing I wanted to ask, as we're talking about comfort, most people's knee-jerk reaction is to fix the AC. What's the best advice if someone is experiencing challenges at home with their home comfort? Where should they actually start?
Well, the first thing to do I mean, not everybody is a handyman, right? So I don't want to suggest solutions that people are going to have to roll up their sleeves and try and get into a space that they may not be comfortable with. But some of the basic things you can do, before you jump the gun of, hey, the AC might be 5 years old, let me replace it, or 10 years old. You know, the base measure is just walk into your local kind of store that provides or sells like small appliances, like a thermometer gun, an infrared gun, whether it's your regular home improvement store. You have several of them around. And the basic AC test you can do is, for a properly functioning AC, the difference between essentially the temperature in your house, so that's the temperature that your air conditioning unit is taking in, right? And the temperature that it's pushing out, which is the air that's coming out of your air registers, right, should be about a 20-degree difference. So, as an example, if your home is at, let's say, 75 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
right? Generally, and you walk up to where you change your filter, and you just point the infrared gun there, and it's saying, "Ooh, it's 75." So the air going into the handler is about 75 degrees. Then you just walk to the nearest register to that handler. You point the infrared at it, and it will tell you, okay, the temperature coming out is about 50, 55 degrees. Then you know your AC is performing as it should, right? So you can almost eliminate, AC as being your issue. So
Okay.
then you start looking at your other options. A basic one without even going to your attic is just pop your attic access. If as you pop the attic access, you start feeling cool air coming down on you, you know immediately I have a problem because there's no way that cold air should be coming from my attic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not air conditioned in my attic, so if I feel cold air coming down on me, that means I have a leak
Somewhere.
somewhere, right? So those are kind of two kind of DIY things that you can do to kind of self-assess
Mm-hmm.
what's happening in terms of your AC performance. You know, after that, that will help you determine which way you go, which direction you go next. Which is, do I need to call a duct specialist to come check out my ducts in the attic, or do I need to now look at if my AC is working well? I'm getting that 55-degree difference. Then maybe my problem is really insulation, and I need to be more efficient in terms of how my insulation performs.
Well, that's definitely some good information. I'm sure there's a lot more we could dive
Mm-hmm.
down deep, but
Yep.
that's up for a discussion on the components of home comfort and efficiency. A huge thank you to Sean from Caller Insulation of North Broward and Boca Raton for breaking all that down for us, from the importance of proper insulation to being able to self-assess. It's clear that making some of these small improvements to your home manages your energy can have a huge impact not only on your comfort but on your wallet as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
So yeah, just like that.